I was in junior high the first time I heard about the Holocaust. I've had my highs and lows just like everybody else. No matter how spiritual you are, you're going to have problems. Like, I'm being rejected everywhere. I must not be valuable. I don't have a good relationship. I don't have a family. When should I kill myself? And I was serious about that. My name is Jay Pennington, and this is my story. I was born in San Antonio, Texas, and I was raised by my mother and grandmother. They were both born and raised in New Orleans. So I was 100% Texan, but grew up on Cajun and Creole food and that kind of thing. But my mother was always very religious, very spiritual. And so from birth, she took me to church. When I was very young, she started reading to me every night. It was a children's book series, but it was through Adam and Eve, Noah, Abraham, Moses, King David. The one night when it was the end of the story of Moses, because he struck the rock, God wouldn't let him go into the promised land, and so he had to stay there and died on the hill. I remember my mother crying when we got to that moment. So there have been some very special things that have happened in my life. They may have been very brief, but they influenced the rest of my life. And I would have to say I do believe that they were God things. The church we went to, they had bought a lot of land out in the Texas Hill Country, and they built a camp, they built barracks and outdoor church. I spent many weekends and summers out there fishing and hiking and things like that. Well, when I was about 5 years old, we were having one of those services up at the camp in the outdoor open-air chapel. And because I was already very familiar with a lot of things, they said, well, if you believe in God, we'd like you to come down front. And I'm like telling my best friend, I said, well, let's go down front. The speaker there, he's like, well, do you understand what you're saying? And I said, yeah. Do you believe in God? I said, yeah. Went down front, got baptized, all those kinds of things. Now, there was something else that happened at our little cabin up in that camp that affected the rest of my life. A lot of things happened up there that really influenced my life. There was some fishing on the Guadalupe River that I would do on Saturday mornings. And so I was always very anxious at Friday night to go to bed and go to sleep. But one Friday evening I couldn't sleep, and we had this little portable black and white TV set that was about 12 inches. And you had to turn the channels. And I came across the movie La Strada. And this was a film made by Fellini. And I was fascinated by it. And then I found out that every Friday night on PBS, they would show another foreign classic film. And so every Friday night, whether I was at the camp or I was back at home, I would be watching these classic foreign films. And it really gave me a passion for films. And that stuck with me the rest of my life. In school, I was taking film studies classes. I minored in film studies in college. And another thing that was really substantial in my life was that my parents had never gone to college, but they knew I should go to college, but they really didn't have any advice for me. It was just, you got to go to college. But when in my senior year, my best friend's mother, she said, you're good in math, you should get a computer science degree. Now, I didn't know what computer science was, but I'm like, okay. And so I did. I got a computer science degree. And it paid off for the rest of my life. I never got rich, but I was always employed, and I love programming. But it only took 10 seconds for my best friend's mother to say that. She could have not said that. She could have not been encouraging to anybody. But she took 10 seconds and gave me some advice that affected the rest of my life positively. But I've had my highs and lows just like everybody else. And no matter how spiritual you are, you're going to have problems. And there are lessons in the Tanakh and the New Testament about trials make you grow, make you smarter, make you more compassionate for other people. I was in junior high the first time I heard about the Holocaust. A classmate of mine His father came in to speak about it. He was a Holocaust survivor. But at the time, I was very young and I had never heard about it before, and the idea of millions of people being killed just didn't register with me. I couldn't wrap my brain around it. 6 million people killed and tortured. I thought, well, in a modern society, how could this have happened? And why didn't the German citizens stop it? And now we have October 7th. And it's shocking, it's saddening, it's horrific what was done to the Jewish people in Israel on October 7th. But I have always had a love for Jewish people. I've got lifelong friends that are Jews. I've just had a kind of a brotherly tie with everyone and a love for Israel. And it's just been natural to me. I find that there's a lot of people in colleges and things like that right now that don't feel that way, but it seems very natural to me. So that is part of my story. So I've had my highs and lows. I worked software at NASA. That was a high. It was in the middle of the Challenger accident when I was working there, and so I had a lot of experience with that accident and the people around it. Met the teacher. I was part of the investigation team afterwards. Kind of a low at that time was my first wife. Turned out was not really spiritual, didn't really believe in God. And when we divorced, she wanted a different lifestyle, so she wanted a divorce. We divorced after 12 years. About 3 years after that, I was given custody of our son. She kidnapped him, and she brainwashed him against me. So that was a very severe time, a very severe trial that didn't have a quick ending. I realized, and when I was about 50 years old, that you didn't have to live in Los Angeles to be an actor or a filmmaker. And so I started acting at that point. I've written screenplays and I've made films from my screenplays and acted in them. And they say don't do that, don't do everything. But my films have won a lot of awards. So it was really a fulfillment of my lifelong dream. Now my biggest trial difficulty has been more recently. I think back to, you have Job, and we have the story of Ruth and Naomi. Naomi had lost her husband, she had lost her 2 sons, and she said, the hand of God has been against me. In the sentences in the New Testament about Jesus during the Last Supper, Jesus looked over at Peter and he said, the devil has asked God if he can sift you like wheat, and I will be your intercessor, but hang in there. In the story of Job, the devil has approached God and said, you know, you're bragging about Job, but if he didn't have all this riches and he didn't have his land and his family and all these great things, he'd probably reject you. And God was saying, no, that's not the case. And so with Job, first he lost his animals, his livelihood. And then a little bit later, he lost all of his children. They were killed. And then later, his wife kind of made fun of him, had given up on him. So I felt like I went through something very similar in the last 4 years. 4 years ago, I had a great job. I was writing software in cattle technology, and I was programming the water to supply the water when they needed it. I loved the job. I was working on ranches. And when I completed the biggest delivery to Microsoft International to get a huge contract, I finished the project, I demonstrated it, Microsoft signed the contract. I thought, well, I'm going to get a really big bonus and I'll be working for this company for the rest of my life now, which would be great. And after the contract was signed, they dropped me. It was a shock. It was very saddening. And the other problem is it was kind of a perfect storm. So I was dropped from that job, and I'm getting older now, 65 now. As you get older, companies don't hire you as readily. And so I found that for 4 years after that moment, I was always being turned down for jobs. But in today's society, you don't talk to somebody. You send your resume to the website and then send you a form email. Well, we We looked at your resume and thanks for applying, but we're not interested. We're going with other people. So I was getting that daily for 4 years. And I was praying about it. I was like, I need a job. I want to work. So I was praying 3 or 4 times a day, and I was not saying a memorized prayer. I was just talking to God as a friend, and it was like a shut door every single time for 4 years. And then I was running out of money, so I was starting to be like Job. I mean, he lost his animals, he lost his income, and still, as I mentioned with my son, he still is not really talking to me, so I kind of lost my son, like Job lost his kids. And then a year after, the first year of my not finding work, my wife said to me, she says, you know, I used to look up to you, but now I look down on you. Probably one of the cruelest things a spouse could hear. As things got worse and worse for Job, he was saying, well, God, why are you doing this to me? At that point, he was kind of going, well, I wish I wasn't born. I wish I wasn't born. I got so low, being turned down for everything, just going completely downhill. And I was so depressed, and people would say, well, I'll pray for you. And I said, well, I've had hundreds of people pray for me, but God, for some reason, has this plan, this to happen. And I really got down to, I didn't have any money. I sold my life insurance policies. I felt like, you know, I'm being rejected everywhere. I must not be valuable. I don't have a good relationship. I don't have a family. When should I kill myself? And I was serious about that. And right when I got to that point, to the very bottom of that pit, my old college buddy, he was a computer science major also, he called me out of the blue, and he says, well, send me your resume. I got an idea. And he had worked, and he had retired from a company that was doing aerospace work for defense. And he gave them my resume, and he recommended me. And they called me about 3 days later, and then the guy says, well, why don't you start on Monday? I'll be doing the software for aerospace, for defense, work from home, flexible hours. I can still do my acting whenever I felt like it. And I've been doing that job for about 6 months now. I can definitely see that this was something that he did. How could a guy 65 get hired writing high-tech software for the government defense work? It really is a miracle, and that's all I can say about it. But when it happened, I've hit it as hard as I can because it's turned my life around, and it's opened up a new chapter for me. Everybody has troubles, and you kind of wonder sometimes why. But there is one scripture. It's John 16:33, and the Messiah said, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. There were times I got mad when I was praying to God, but so did King David. So please hang in there and don't lose your faith and don't give up. And there's supernatural things that are above our normal daily lives. There are God things out there, and God will take care of you. He knows the number of hairs on your head, and he knows when a sparrow falls, so he knows about you.